Welcome back inside the Gamecocks, the morning show. There is John Whittle with the Big Spur. Hello, John. Rough weekend around the yard. We will get to the good stuff here in a little bit, Gamecock softball, but tough times at Founders Park. What'd you make of it?
What I make of it, I don't know what you want me to say. That wasn't any good.
That was nice.
That's what I make of it. Friday night with just a bunch of owls out there hooting, outside the stadium in the woods at midnight. That was a pretty competitive game overall, but it wasn't on Sunday.
No, it wasn't. That's the first time all year I've looked at this group and thought, I don't know that they really want to be out there, to be honest with you. I'm not questioning, I could be dead wrong, and I'm not questioning players and quitting and stuff like that, but it just felt to me like I've had enough. Like Mike referenced a bad relationship a minute ago, like you just walk in, you're like, I've had enough of that. I just can't do this anymore. That's what it felt like, to be quite frank with you. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah. I don't know what you want me to say. It wasn't. Yeah. It was, and I asked Paul Maneri something about that after the game. He talked about having some poor defensive miscues, and you don't expect things like that, and those kind of things aren't acceptable. And he benched guys last weekend against Kentucky when they had some defensive mistakes and coverage mistakes, and I guess did that this weekend too. And I said, is that a sign that the team's kind of lost some heart? And he said, no, it's a sign that they're making errors. So, I can understand where you're coming from with that statement.
Let me ask you this. Just in being an observer of this, covering the team, do you feel like this group of players thinks that the leaders of this coaching staff have their backs?
No. There's, and I don't know how you could. Paul's been kind of throwing guys under the bus for a lot of the years. He told you on last Monday on 107.5 when he does his postmortem on that station that, we just have to go out and get better players, and we're going to try as hard as we can right now. But that doesn't. If that's the message you want to send, that's fine. That's one way to go about it. But to answer your question specifically, no, it doesn't. If I'm a player, it doesn't feel like he's got my back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to decipher. Like Bo, for instance, didn't play this weekend. Now, I don't know Bo Hollins's injury history or anything like that, and I'm not saying that I'm not trying to insinuate that Coach Maneri was lying to us either. That is far from it. But, one of the things, Mike, we reference coach speak often, right? And all kinds of, that's coach speak. Well, there's a reason for coach speak. Coach speak exists for reasons. And generally, it is to protect their players, because they don't want them to ever think that they don't want anything publicly to be misconstrued or misunderstood for what they actually mean. So you hear a lot of coaches speak, and the public and the media, we're like, it's just a bunch of gibberish. We didn't get anything out of that. But it protects the locker room, and that's why it exists. And I feel like there's been a lot of times this year where maybe what he was saying was 100% truthful, and that's great for the public to hear the truth because we all want to hear the truth. But a coach's job is to protect the locker room, and I don't know that they've done that very well this year, guys. To be honest.
Yeah, I would agree with you there on that, and I do appreciate a coach who is as honest as he can be, but there is too honest, and for the reasons you addressed, and it's crossed that line a little bit. But obviously when things are going poorly, you dive into that more than
100%.
you do when you're winning. So, but this season is going about as excuse me, about as poorly as it could go. We're there aren't many teams in the last 15 years of the SEC that have been this bad. South Carolina might make it to 7 wins this year in the conference. They could win 2 out of these last 6 games. They could win more, but there's only been 3 teams in the last 15 years that haven't won at least 7 games in the conference. Obviously, it'll be 4 with Missouri this year to add to it, but South Carolina might join that elite group that includes Missouri from 2014 and Alabama from 17 and Ole Miss from 2022 that didn't even reach the 7-win mark.
Very good. Well, let me ask you a question about the players. You cover baseball recruiting, don't you, John?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else cover baseball recruiting in this state, or is it primarily just you?
Well, there are a few folks out there, and I'd be I'd be lying if I told you I'm as deep in the weeds on it as I was a few years ago. But yeah, there are a few folks out there.
Okay. Did you cover any of the players on this current roster who were being recruited by South Carolina baseball?
Oh, sure.
All right. Did anybody else want any of these guys, or were they just a bunch of losers that nobody wanted?
Oh, goodness. No, these guys were wanted by a lot of folks. Oh. And,
can you any?
I'll give you one specific example that, I think means something. Aiden Palmer was over at Florence Darlington Tech. And as you guys know, most folks go to junior college and stay for 2 years. That's kind of the deal. You'll see guys leave after 1 year occasionally, but they usually go and stay 2 years and then go to another school or into the draft or what have you. Mm-hmm. Florida was sniffing around really hard on Aiden Palmer, and Florida wanted to get Aiden Palmer, after 1 year at Flodar. And
you're talking about the Florida Gators, Kevin O'Sullivan, one of the best pitching coaches in the history of the game. That's who you're talking about. Okay.
Right. Wanted him, and now South Carolina ended up landing him. So that's one example that kind of stands out really dramatically. But most of these guys could have gone anywhere. KJ Scobie was committed to Louisville at one point in time, and when he opened that door, he could have gone wherever he wanted to go. There's these guys were recruited by everybody.
Okay, so I'm not saying that they have the most talented team in the league. I think we could all agree they don't, but they don't have the least talented team in the league, do they? Or like they shouldn't be playing in like the SoCon, should they? They've got players
this team should not be outclassed like they have been for most of the year. It's just there's just no two ways about it. I went through it in a story this morning. Last year's team, this time last year when we were talking on this Monday last year, South Carolina was ranked 13th in the country. They were projected to host a regional. 48 out of 54 games this time last year, they were a pretty darn good baseball team. It fell off at the end for some various reasons, but this wasn't a bad baseball team. But you've got 4 starters back from last year's team, and you didn't upgrade at catcher. That was going to be hard to do, losing Cole Messina anyway. And it's a stark difference from last year to this year at that position. But you're better at first base. You're better at second base. You're better at third base. You're better in center field. Miles better in center field.
No doubt.
And then you've got 3 other starters, and then your 4th other starter was Will Tippett, and they've gotten more production out of that shortstop position than they did last year. You're better almost across the board from a position player standpoint. From a pitching standpoint, you brought in 2 of the top junior college pitchers in the country, and Brandon Stone and Jackson Susie, And, Brendan Sweeney is a guy who has been throwing at times 97 miles an hour. So you brought in some good pitchers from the junior college ranks. I mean, you went and, this coaching staff picked up a couple of pitchers from the portal that they liked in Ashton Crowther and Jarvis Evans. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't add up to me to being like this. South Carolina's got a about an 8.5 ERA in SEC play. It's 5.62. I think it's 5.62 overall on the season. It hadn't been that high since 1997, and it really hadn't been close to that high except for a year or two since that time. Of course, in 1999, we know that they changed the bats the first time from the trampolines they were back in 1997 to not even where they are now. They scaled them down some, and then they scaled them down again back in 2011. That's one thing that makes South Carolina's back-to-back national championships really cool. I think is they won it in 2010 with one style of bat, and then they deadened the bats a little bit more the next year, and they won it again. That's another one of those things that makes those teams special. They did it, in a couple of different ways, but should you be setting records at South Carolina with this team from a talent standpoint? And when I say records, I mean bad records. No.
So what's the solution?
That's probably a better question for a couple of weeks from now. There's certainly going to be a lot of transition, on the roster. I mean, you gotta figure out, why the guys who are performing poorly from last year to this year, or haven't lived up to the hype from a recruiting standpoint or whatever. You got to figure out why that is. And why is that? Paul Maneri's won a lot more games than I have, but.
Well, I would imagine somewhere in there getting some more players would be part of the solution.
Well, 100%.
No, absolutely.
So how does that? I guess what I'm asking you to do might be somewhat impossible, but if anybody can do it, it is John Whittle.
Very talented.
Where are the majority of players that are going to be coming in? And I imagine there's going to be a lot of turnover. Where are they? Are we talking high school kids? Are we talking major player in the portal? Where do you think it all? I know you said you fall recruiting, but you're not as deep in the weeds as you used to be. Where are these players coming from, and how realistic is it? Because the first year you can use as an alibi. Most of those kids have already made their decision. It's really hard to just go late in the game and start getting top-notch transfers and recruits that late in the game. Okay, granted. You don't get that alibi in year two. So where are they coming from? How's it going to look?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to come from the portal. I mean, there's been most of those days when you see Thomas McCroy or Dylan Eskew coaching first base, it's because, whoever the coach is out watching junior college players. Monty Lee, John Hendry, they've been out scouring the JUCO ranks, and there hadn't been a whole lot of action coming out of that. Got a few JUCO kids committed, but at this point it's not going to be high school guys unless a unique situation kind of comes about. It's going to be guys from the portal, and we know that portal guys cost money. There's a premium you have to pay when you go get a guy from the portal versus, if you recruit them as a high school kid and they love it here and want to stay around. Like if you went and got Lenora Sellers or Ethan Petrie out of the portal, like you're paying, probably twice as much at least is what, South Carolina is having to pay them now. Like that's just kind of the way the portal works.
I guess I'm curious, John, for example, in basketball, it was well known that this past year, South Carolina was at the bottom in NIL resources, right? So then what we were told was, yeah, but the new AD now, he doesn't want that. He's going to put a major emphasis on there's going to be a lot more money to get better players in the portal. And you got Eagle staff, and that lasted for about a week, and then he left. And now, if you look at Carolina's portal class rankings, and I'm not saying that's everything, I still think they'll be a better team next year, but it's near the bottom in terms of what they got versus SEC competition. So let's move that forward to baseball. I'm guessing, again, the new AD says, well, we're not going to be anything but near the top because we're an elite program and we're going to spend elite money on players in the portal. So what does that look? What is that number then? What is that dollar figure? I'm asking you because I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Well, yeah. It also depends on, what's going to happen with that house settlement too. Is that going to go through? Like, is it going to be revenue share? Because revenue share is not going to make a difference on impacting NIL in a positive way from last year to this year. South Carolina spent 4 times the amount of money this year on players as they did on last year's team. That's mind-boggling to me. Last year's team was, and obviously each year that we've gone through this, prices go up, right? Like you're paying more for your roster, but to go from a regional team and a team that at this point last year was top 15 in the country to spending 4 times the amount for this year's team and to have what's probably going to be your worst SEC record ever. It doesn't line up to me. But to kind of answer your question, if the house settlement passes and we're talking revenue share, like South Carolina baseball isn't going to get the same revenue share to go out and woo players with money as they had this past off season. So, I don't know. It's going to be a real challenge. And as basketball is the basketball team, like you brought up, found out, like when you're that bad, you have to go out and overpay kids to want to come play for you. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard for me to see, a great path to rebuild this thing particularly quickly with the way things are right now, because as Jamie was alluding to earlier, when there's obvious discontent, and there's obvious discontent, and it will become even more obvious when the portal opens here in a few weeks. That's going to raise red flags to players who are making decisions about where they want to go to school. So, Lamont had to deal with that this past off season. Paul Maneri is going to have to deal with it this off season with baseball.
What you said about the portal is a great question from Mike. That was not a gotcha question or anything. It was a pretty point blank question, and it's a real one. I would add to that though, John, and I know that you'll certainly agree with this. Like I'm over this fraction of people that thinks that just all these guys suck, and that's why I asked you that question earlier. I just want to make sure South Carolina wasn't the only one that recruited these kids. I think that they need to develop the core of this group. Like, you can't lose KJ Scobie and Bo Hollins and these guys, a lot of these pitchers and stuff, like, they're not bad. They're not that bad. And you know what? Even if they're not as good as some of the other guys, when you develop freshman year to sophomore year to junior year to senior year, and you stay in the program for 2 or 3 years, you get better. Even if you are above average talent and you're not elite talent, those are the guys that you're looking for in the portal. Those guys that I just explained, who are developed for 2 or 3 years, and then they're not in the draft, but they can still help a college team. You've got that opportunity right now. They're right there. They're on your roster. And so if you start seeing those guys jump into the portal, that is a huge red flag. Huge red flag. Like, it is the biggest red flag on the planet. And, so while, they have to go, they're going to have to, like, be heavy in the portal. Absolutely. Again, I'm not talking to you, and I'm not talking to Mike. I'm just saying my piece of it. They have to develop the players that are in their system. You can't just be running off everybody every time we don't think that these guys are good enough. You'll never win that way. And so I in theory, like people make it sound, so we just got to go get better players. Okay. You want to replace 20 kids a year? Have at it. You're going to suck.
Let me say this. I know for a fact they want to keep Scobie and they want to keep Hollins. That's not an issue.
I know that
it's not an issue on their end. Do they want to go? It's up to, I mean, look, Scobie committed to Louisville, as you guys talked about. He's got ties to the state of Kentucky and to the state of Florida. He's going to be heavily coveted in the portal. Hollins is a guy who is a Major League Baseball legacy, who's big, who's strong, who's only going to get bigger, better, stronger. These are guys that are going to be offered in the portal. There's no doubt about it. But let me just say this for the coaching staff, if nothing else. It's not as if they don't know what talented players look like and don't want to keep the ones they have. They do. Whether or not they're able to do it, I have no clue. I don't know. I don't know what is going to be offered and so on and so forth. In the perfect world, they keep guys like that and a couple of good young arms, whoever those may be, and then they fortify the roster with guys in the portal that are proven productive players from other spots. That's the perfect sweet spot. It's up to the coaching staff to get there. I don't know if they do or they don't.
And I agree with you. But
I agree too. That's what
they got a late start last year because of the hiring process. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. But they had a lot more to sell and still enough time to go get good players. Last year, and they had more money. Like you're coming off of a season where you went to a regional. You should have some new energy with a new coach, and you can sell. His College World Series pedigree, as you mentioned, five College World Series trips in 10 straight years at LSU. You should, and Terry Rooney's known as a great recruiter or whatever, but you had a lot to sell to a pool of players big enough to get some quality ones, and you didn't go out and do it. And my point is, it's going to be a lot more difficult this offseason to go get the number of impact players that you need because of roster transition, whether it's guys graduating or guys leaving, regardless. I mean, there's guys that fit into both categories. It's going to be a lot more difficult this offseason after you haven't been to a regional and have the 15th best program out of 16 in the SEC, and you have less money to spend. It's going to make it a much bigger challenge, this offseason than it was this past offseason.
Mm-hmm. We're all on the same page about that. Yeah, they want to keep these guys, but if they leave, you have to ask the question, where are they going and why? They played every game, So anyways, all right, John, we don't have much time left with you, so I do want to ask you about softball. Gamecocks with a huge series win over Alabama. They've got 39 wins. They're number 10 right now in the RPI. They're the 7 seed in the SEC tournament, so they do have a bye. They're going to await the winner of, I think, Auburn and Alabama, as a matter of fact. And I don't think Auburn and Alabama played each other this year in softball. I thought they were rivals. What in your mind do the Gamecocks need to do in this SEC tournament, other than win it, clearly, to maybe secure a top 8 national seed? I think it's a foregone conclusion they're a host. They're going to host. But what do they need to do to be a top 8 national seed and secure home field throughout the postseason?
Probably a lot.
Okay.
Probably a lot. I mean, they're going to have to go down there and win a couple of games. I mean, you'll play either Auburn or Alabama, as you mentioned in that first game, and then if you win, you play. I believe it's Texas A&M, who's got the top RPI in the country. I think you have to win that one for sure to have a good case at a national seed. Top 8 seed, and then you probably have to even win one after that to be honest with you to be in that conversation. I mean, a lot of times these committees go very heavily on RPI, and right now South Carolina's 10th in RPI, and they're going to have to move up a couple of spots, and you're also looking at seven or it's at least 7. It might be 8 teams of the 9 that are in front of South Carolina. I think it's 7 of the 9 teams that are in front of South Carolina that are in the SEC. So you're probably going to have to pass a couple of those SEC schools to be one of those top 8 seeds, because they don't want every school to be a national seed or a top 8 seed. So I think you're probably going to have to at least make the semifinal to be in that conversation. And of course, if you win the tournament, you're going to be a top 8 seed and probably jump up, pretty big in that number. But I think you're probably going to have to advance to the championship or at least to the semifinal to be in the conversation.
What's really neat about this, what's in their favor too, they have not lost a game, quad 2, quad 3, or quad 4. All 14 losses this year for South Carolina are quad 1. And additionally, on the quad 1 conversation, the Gamecocks have played the most quad 1 games in the country, tied with Alabama. South Carolina also has the most quad 1 victories in the country with 23. That is tied with Florida and with Texas A&M. And John, as you just pointed out, if they're able to go get 1 or 2 more wins, 3 wins, something like that here in the SEC tournament, you're going to have 24. They have the second most quad 1 victories. Texas has the most at 24. But regardless, they'll have 24, 25, maybe 26 of them. That's going to be, I think that'll be their calling card if their RPI is right there, 8 or 9, something like that. That's what they're going to bang the drum on. They're going to say, well, look at all of our quad 1 victories and we have no bad losses. And we'll see if it's enough or not. But regardless of the fact, they're going to be playing in home at some point in time in the postseason, definitely in the regional round. And this has just been a miracle worked by Ashley Chastain and her staff, man. Wow, crazy.
Yeah, it's been incredible. And, she deserves a ton of credit. I mean, I thought the path of upward trajectory in softball in the SEC was going to be a very steep mountain to climb. And, I thought Ashley had a chance to be really good here and thought she had a chance to put together a competitive team this season, but I certainly didn't expect this. I thought South Carolina would probably be I thought South Carolina would probably be an NCAA tournament team this year, probably. But, to be talking about a potential top 8 national seed and having the road to Oklahoma City, pass through Columbia, I didn't ever dream that it would happen this year. And, I thought it would be difficult for it to ever happen, to be honest with you, just because that SEC softball is so competitive. But here we are.
This is neat. I'm looking forward to covering it. All right. Did we miss anything? Is there anything that?
No, we missed Mike. He just disappeared into the maybe back into that beautiful wall art that he has.
He might have gone to play the piano back there. All right. Well, John, thank you for your time, man. It's always a pleasure. There's no doubt about it. Unfortunately, the main subject this time of year is Gamecock baseball, and it's been tough, and we get that, but you do a marvelous job of covering it.
You got one of your guys in your chat box ask a question, so since they're subscribers, I'll be glad to answer it. It's going to be well below rev share is going to be well below that number that Craig was asking right there. So take that for whatever it's worth.
Can they sneak it in before if the house settlement comes in? It's already late, right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as that house settlement hadn't happened yet, they can still use some of that funny money
right
in there. So
which is what everybody else is doing.
You're right.
Yeah, and they've tried to get some NIL deals done with current players on the roster, and have in some instances, but these things aren't binding and enforceable. So if they want to go into the portal at the end of the season, there's going to be nothing preventing that from happening. And folks will start raising their fist. What about Arkansas and that quarterback? And I mean, it's not going to happen with baseball. We're not talking about the same kind of dollar figures. What's Arkansas trying to claw back from Madden? What, like $400,000 or something?
Oh, I don't know.
They can get back, like, I mean, we're not talking about money like that they would be able to claw back from, South Carolina baseball players. I mean, it wouldn't be worthwhile at all. So, but to your point, yes. Until that house settlement goes through, they can keep spending collective money and spend it as they please.
Well, all right. John, have a marvelous Monday.
Y'all as well. I appreciate you having me. Always a good conversation.
John,
you,
start the Teddy Hefner hour with Gorman Thomas is one of the most underrated players in the history of baseball. That'll put him in a good mood from then on. It's going to be a very upbeat segment.
All right, I'll see if I can work that in there.
Work that in. Gorman Thomas, 82 Brewers.
All right, perfect. Appreciate you guys.
See you, buddy.
Man.